I always feel bad. I'm the only one who always gets off all my issues. No, you all invited to speak up. This is Litvak's Anonymous. Anyone can get on and kvetch. Good morning. We're learning as a schus refuel Shlema for Ilana Chaya Bas Serach. I believe we are in Daf Lamed Aleph Amid Aleph. We're about 7 lines from the top. Nachman Yitzchak by Yitzchak Amar Ayayin. We had this statement that we paskin like Rav Shimon Shazuri in when he says in a Mishnah, when he says a halacha. So we keep on looking around. What was the case that he was talking about? What was he referring to when he said? I think it was Rav Avin said that the halacha is like Rav Shimon Shazuri. So Rav Nachman Yitzchak said something about Yayin. That's not. Rav Meir Aimer. This is going to bring you back to Rav Chananya Skana Koyanin. If you remember, there's a special halacha legabi mashkas about liquids that if they become tamei, they always become a rishon. They themselves become a rishon. That means even if a rishon latuma touches, the way it works is you have a avatuma, and then you have a rishon latuma. An av touches something, it makes it into a rishon. It has to be something that's capable of becoming tamei. But if it's capable of becoming tamei, it becomes a rishon. And something that's a rishon touch something, it becomes a sheni, and so on. But and there's different rules for rishon versus sheni, and different rules for an av versus a rishon. But a liquid has a different din. A mashka has a different din. The chamor misaken on it that it's going to become a rishon, even if it was touched by a rishon, it now becomes a rishon itself. Or even if it's touched by a sheni can make a mashka tamei, and it makes the mashka go all the way back to becoming a rishon. But this is all dependent on the fact that it's a mashka. This Mishnah has a machlekes about what's considered a liquid. The viscosity of a substance can vary. So he says oil is considered a liquid, and it's going to have this din that it's always going to become a tchila. It's always a tchila is another word for rishon l'tuma. It's going to have this rule that we just said it's going to apply to. It's not going to be considered a solid. Chum say even honey, which is less liquid than oil, even less than oil, that it becomes that it's treated like a liquid. That's always going to be a rishon l'tum. It's always going to be a tchila. Rav Shimon Shazuri Omer af hayayin. Shimon Shazuri says even the wine is going to have the same din. What do you mean af hayayin? That seems a little backwards. Wine is more liquid than either oil or dvash. So why would you say even wine is considered? So you have to switch it around. Reb Shimon Tzuzuri says, no, only wine is considered a liquid. The other two substances are not liquids. They're more slow moving, and they don't have this din of a liquid that they should have the din that they become a rishon. So this is we've come to a conclusion of a case that we were referring to with halachas like Rav Shimon Shazuri. Because we don't have all the other cases, we kept on saying, we find another person who mentions the halacha is like someone else, and we ask, why don't we say Shimon Shazuri, Rav Shimon Shazuri, if that was what he was talking about over here, we don't have that. Tanya, Rav Shimon Shazuri, Pam Achas, Nis'arav li Tevel b'chulin. One time, I mixed together Tevel. Tevel is Trumas and Maisrus produce, right? You're mechuyev to take off Trumas and Maisrus, and this person had some of that, and he mixed it with chulin. He had some post Trumas and Maisrus produce. That after you take off the Trumas and Maisrus, what's left is chulin. You're allowed to do with it as you wish. Tevel you're not allowed to use, but you have a mixture now of the two. Ubasi sha'alti es Reb Tarfon. I went to ask Reb Tarfon, what should I do about this? I can't just take off truma, because then I might be taking off some of the truma will be from chulin. You can't use chulin, something that was already had truma taken off of it. V'amali, he said to me, Now, the problem with this is that there's a rule that we're going to see, you can't, ain't tarmim in a potter al achiyev or achiyev al potter. You're not allowed to take off truma from something that's mechuyev in truma deraisa on something that's mechuyev truma derabanan, or vice versa. You can't take off something that's mechuyev truma derabanan until it's mechuyev truma deraisa. So this truma, as we're going to see, this mixture of tevel with chulin, really, the tevel is bottled to the chulin. So really, midaraisa no longer needs to have truma taken off of it. So it's only mechuyev midarabanan. So you can't just take regular tevel and use that, because then you're taking from deraisa on derabanan. So what do? Kach lecha min hashuk. Go to the marketplace. The marketplace, as we all know, is full of amaratzim. And an amaretz, there's a special din of demai that we say what you buy from him is midirabanan mechuyev and trumas amaisrus. So even though midiraisa roiv amaratzim do take off truma, but midirabanan they will misaken, you should still take off. But asar alav, so you could take truma from that, because that's only mechuyev truma derabanan, because there's a roiv that roiv amaratzim do take off trumas and maisrus, and you could use it to take off this truma from this tevel that really is bottle, and therefore it's only mechuyev to have trumas taken off him in derabanan. Why? Because sava deraisa meruba bottle. Because like we just said, he holds that in our case, of this ar tevel b'chulin, it's only derabanan, because midaraisa it's bottle b'roiv. So midaraisa you're potter from taking off truma. Roiv amayar's masrim. Hein. And most amaratzim, when you go buy from the shuk, also it's only midarabanan, because midaraisa, most of them are going to take off trumas and maisus, and therefore midaraisa you don't have to. It's only midarabanan. V'havalik a potter ala potter. It's considered like tarmina potter ala potter, which is an expression means over here it's derabanan al derabanan rather than a derabanan on a deraisa, or vice versa.
So what happens to the original table that he was holding? I mean, it's still mixed in.
But no, so he does. Let's say he has 100 pounds of chulin, right? And he mixed in a pound of tevel. So he knows he has to take off truma on that pound of tevel, but he can't take from it because some of it will be using chulin. So he goes finds another pound, let's say 2 pounds, a pound of what do you call it? A pound of this other demai tevel, and you buy from a it's not tevel per se, but you buy a pound of tvua from a amaretz, and now you have to take off truma from it, and you take off, instead of taking off 10%, you take off 20% of it. So you have 10% for the new pound that you bought, as well as 10% for the original tevel that's mixed in. You can have it in mind on that it should be truma on that, because you could this is their equivalent. You've generated something that has the equivalent obligation as the tevel that got mixed in, and now you use this to separate truma.
Mm-hmm.
Gemara, why don't we have an alternative way of dealing with this problem? Instead of going and buying from the shuk, from an amaretz, go buy from a guy. Because a guy, as we're going to see, a guy, when he buys an Eretz Yisrael, there are banan, the mesaken, that when they grow something in Eretz Yisrael, you should take trumas and maisas from it. So that should also be a source that you can get something that has a chiyuv of truma derabanan that can be used to alleviate the chiyuv of this tevel that got mixed into the chulin. So this mandama holds that when a guy buys an Eretz Yisrael, we disregard that as far as trumas and maisas. The deraisa, he does not consider to have a kinyan. And therefore, midaraisa it's mechuyev in truma, and therefore you can't use that on this derabanan nekachiyev. Ikadami, some have it exactly the opposite. Amalei, the answer that Reb Tarfon had given him was like Kachman Kechavim. He said, buy from a guy, because Yeshkin Kechav Meretz Yisrael Afki Miyad Meiser. He holds a taka is only midrabanan when a guy has a kinyan, buys land in Eretz Yisrael. Therefore, it's a good eitzah. So why doesn't he tell him to? Then they asked him, why did you say buy from an Amaretz? He holds that he holds fakert. He holds that most Amaratzim don't take off Trumas and Maisrus, and therefore they are midaraisa when you buy from Amaretz. You have to separate Trumas and Maisrus, and therefore it would be Torah Menachiv al Apato. Shalach leRavim b'Shamei leRapapa. Hada Amar Ravim b'Chinna Amar Ula Amar Rav Chanina Halach Rav Shimon Shazuri. V'loy oid. This is the original statement that caused all these problems. That he said the halacha is like Rav Shimon Shazuri. V'loy oid alekol makom sheshana Rav Shimon Shazuri halacha kamoisei af menisarav le tevel b'chulin. He said that's even on this din that we just said of nisarav le tevel b'chulin. That means Rav Shimon Shazuri had said over that this is what Reb Tarfon directed me to do, and he said that this is what you should do. This is Reb Shimon Shazuri's psak. So he says that this rule that we said from Ravin, the Rav Machina said, is going to apply to this as well. He asked, does it apply to this? Amalei in. He said, yes, it does apply in this case. Amar Ravashi, Amalei Mazutra, Kashiba, Rechinanina, Misura, Pshita. What was the question? He said, what was of course, it's a psak of Shimon Shazuri, and we just said we paskin like him. As the Gemara, mikama bishnasenu. Why would you have thought maybe it could be a question? Because maybe it just said that we paskin like of Shimon Shazuri in that Mishnah, but not anywhere else. But he didn't say that. He said kol makom sheshana kamer. He said in any place we paskin like him, and this is a psak of Shimon Shazuri. He doesn't really understand why it was needed to say that to paskin like Rosh Shimon Shazuri. That was what we said, and it's dvarim pshutim. Okay, back to the Sefer Torah, Tefillin, and Mezuzos. Amar Rav, Kera haba b'shnei shitin yitvar. If you have a rip on the top of a I guess a Sefer Torah, or a Tefillin, if one of the Devar Stam, one of these Sifrei, one of these klafim, if you have a rip that comes from the top or the bottom, as we're going to see later in the Gemara, and it goes into the writing, it doesn't rip the actual letters, but it goes between two letters. So if it goes up to two lines into the writing, yitfar, you can sew it up and continue using the Sefer Torah. B'shalosh al yitfar, but if it goes into the third line, that's too much. That already ruins that piece of parchment, and you have to put it into gniza and write a new one. Amalei Rabba Zuti l'Ravashi. Rabba Zuti said to Ravashi, Haki Amar Rabbi Yirmiyah midifti mishmei de Rava. This is what Rabbi Yirmiyah midifti said in the name of Rava. Hadam rina b'shalosh al yitvar. That we said if it reaches down into three lines, you don't sew it up. Lo yamar elabat tikta. That's only talking about an old parsha, an old sefer, which the Gemara is going to soon change that. But the Zak Rashi, Atika klaf yoshin Mignaya Kriya. A old sefer, if you also have a rip in it, if it goes three down, that's already they're mitzdaref, they're added together, and you say this is already not a good sefer. First of all, it was old, and as we're going to see, it gets a different color, and then you have a rip on top of it, it's not salvageable. Avul chadata less lamba, but if a new one, then that's not a problem. You can even go 3 lines in. The Mefarshim say only up to 3 lines. It can't be more than 3 lines. When we say old and new, we don't mean mamish old and new. One is that it was color. They used to treat the parchment with something called afitzin, which would make it dark. And so if it was treated with the afitzan, with this nuts, so the parchment was dark and you had a rip on it, so that was too much. Then you'd have to put it into geniza. But if it wasn't, so that's what we call atika. That's what we call old. But if it was new, meaning it didn't have the afitzan, so then you could save it. Other Mefarshim switch it around and they say afitzin is like a preservative. So if it was treated with this preservative and then it ripped, then you could save it. But if it wasn't, then you can't. Other Rishonim. So Vahani mila begidin, that which you say you could sew it up, that's only if you use the sign used, aval begardin loy. But you can't use thread to sew it up, because that again is not going to be it will be unsightly. What if you have a rip that doesn't go into the actual writing, but it goes in between columns? Bein shita l'shita, or if it goes horizontally from the side in between one line and the next. So it's not coming from the top or the bottom and interrupting the writing, but it's going between lines. What's the din? Is that also going to have the same din that you have to dispose of it if it goes in too far? So Gemara Teku, it's not clear. Amr of Ziri, Amr of Chananel, Amr of Rav. Mezuzah shekos v'shtayim shtayim kshera. A mezuzah that was written 2/2. Let's see, Rashi, shtayim, shtayim. Shitas ksaris, a little bit up. Shitas ksaris, shita bas shtei tevas. It's small lines, each line only having 2 words on it. So you made a line, a column, each a column in the Sefer Torah that only has 2 words going from top to bottom. Or mezuzah, I'm sorry. It's kasha. Ibaylu, shtayim v'shalosh v'achas ma'u. What happened if you had 2 letters, 2 words, then 3 words, and then 1 word? So it was very going in, then out, then in. Ma'u, Amar Rav Nachman Yitzchak, kol shechein she'asa kshera. It certainly, I'm sorry, kol shechein she'asa kashira. It certainly is going to be kosher because you made it like the shira. If you ever looked in the Sefer Torah, when they have Az Yashir, it goes in and out and in and out. So this is similar to that, so that's good. Meisei Frek the Gemara, this is talking about a Sefer Torah. Asa kashira. If you made a part of the Sefer Torah that's not supposed to be a shira, if you made it in the way that you make a shira going in and out, oy shira kamaisa, or if you made the shira all straight and not going in and out, psula, and the Sefer Torah is puzzle. So how could we say over here that by mezuzah, if you make mezuzah is not supposed to be kashira, and you made it like a shira, how could we say that that makes it kosher? So kitanya hi b'Sefer Torah. That we only said by Sefer Torah that it's puzzle. Sefer Torah has a higher standard. So if it's supposed to be a shir and it's not, it's going to be puzzle. But the mezuzah, as long as you did it in some kind of viable ksiva, even if you did it in a kashira, even though it's not supposed to be, the mezuzah, it's okay. Itmanami amar Rabbi Bachana amar Rabbi Yechanan. V'amila amar Rav Achabar Bachana amar Rabbi Yechanan. Mezuzah she'asa shtayim v'shalosh v'achas kshera. If you make it 2 and 3 and 1, that's kosher, like we just said. Ubelvad shel yasenik kekuva, as long as you don't make it like a tent. We have the nice pictures in the Rashi on the side, meaning you're having 1 followed by 2 followed by 3. So it's like the shape of a wigwam, right? I don't know if anyone knows that word anymore, but you know what a wigwam is? That's what the Indians used to, the tents of the Indians come to a point on the top and it would go get wider, like a triangle. So, I think like there's no such thing as writing about Indians anymore, right? You can't even use the word unless you're talking about people who answer phone support. So Zok the Gemara. So you can't do it like that. And it can't be the other way around, that it's thin on top and goes up, gets wider on bottom. Both of these things I don't know. Rashi didn't say why not. I assume it just looks weird to have it like this. It's not kashira, and it's not like the regular ksiva. Amar of Chizda al haaretz b'shita achroina. The words al haaretz, right? The last pasuk in the mezuzah is Laman Yirbu Yemechem Yemenechem Al Dom Hashanishva Hashem Levisechem Lasus Lahem Kimei Hashemayim Al Haaretz. Those last words are on the last line. They're the only two words on the last line. The words Al Haaretz. Ikad Amri B'Seif Shita. Some say it's at the end of the last line. Ikad Amri B'Tchila Shita. And some say it's at the beginning of that last line. Madam B'Seif Shita. The Madam says it's at the end of the last line, meaning you skip. It looks very strange, right? You have the whole pasuk, and then you skip, and then you put these last two at the end of the last line. Kigvaya shemayim al haaretz. It's trying to. The pasuk is saying L'man yirbu yemechem, that you're going to live a long time. It's trying to put. So you want the last words before that. Kimei hashemayim al haaretz. So the end of the last line is Kimei hashemayim, and then right underneath it you have the words al haaretz. It's trying to put a physical representation of the shemayim on top of the haaretz to tell you that you're going to be yirbu yemechem, like the distance between the shemayim and the haaretz. The Mandam says you put it at the beginning of the line. This way you have at the beginning of the line al haaretz, at the end of the last line is shemayim. So you're making a big gap between them to say you're going to live as long as the distance between shemayim and haaretz. Amar of Chelbay, Chazina Leila of Huna, the Karach Leme Echad Klapi Shma. First of all, he says a couple of things. First of all, he said when you would wind up the mezuzahs, then you would wind it from the words echad toward Shema, obviously from the last word on the left to the first word on the right. So you wind it up from left to right. You roll it up. Also, you make the parsha stumas. There's a lot of different shittas about what exactly stumas is, but I'll go with what I learned when I was in 4th grade or so, right? When we all learned Parshas Vayechi, and we said stumas means that there's no gap between one parsha and the next parsha. Meisvei, so the different parshias in the mezuzah, you don't make a gap between them. Meisvei, Amar of Shimon ben Elazar, Remeya hayakaisva al duch sustus. He would write the mezuzahs on. There were two types of parchment. There's a parchment from the outer hide, from the outer leather, the skin, and then there was an inner hide that was also, some people used it. So he would write it on the duchsustus, on the inner hide, and he would make it kimindaf, and he would make it a high sakrashi, like a column in a Sefer Torah. Sakrashi kamin amid shebesvam arucho ksara. It would be very high and very few words in it, which is mezuzahs are usually spread out. He would make a space, a margin on top and on bottom. And he would make a gap. He would make them psuchas, not stumas. So this is Saisa, what we just said. We said that the pashas and the mezuzah are stumas, and he's saying it's psuchas. Amarti lo Rebbe matam. I asked him, why do you do it like this? He says, since these two parshias of the mezuzah of Shema and Leman Yirbu are far away from each other in the Sefer Torah, so even though the parsha is in the Torah is a stuma, but that means the paragraph that comes right after that is stuma. But since they're separated in the Sefer, in the actual Sefer Torah, we're not going to make them. We make them psuchas. And we say that the halacha is like this. So how could Remeya say that it's stumas if we pass on that it's psuchas? My lava psuchas. So this we said halacha is Rav Shimon Elazar. Doesn't it mean on the din that he said psuchas? So we're loya revach. It's not going on that. Rather, it's going on that which we said that you left a gap on top and on bottom of the mezuzah, it's not referring to the halacha that he said about psuchas. They really are stumas. The kamer revach. How much space do you leave in the mezuzah? Amar Menachos bar Yaakov, Amila Amar of Shmuel bar Yaakov, Kamale etva the sifri or the safri, like you would use something a clip to hold a sefer Torah, a scroll. As you know, we all know if you have a Megillah that you try to use on Purim, it's very hard to keep the scroll from rolling up. So they had like a clip to hold it open while they were writing. So that clip, I guess, would go on the top, and you didn't want it to go onto the letters. So that's the amount of revach you have to do. So when they would write it and they would put the clip on it, it wouldn't interfere with the writing. Amalei Abaya l'Rav Yosef. Adloi Tizbra d'chi Amar Rav arevach. How could you say that we had this problem that Rav had said that it's going that we paskin like the halach is like Reb Shimon Elazar, and he had said that we do a mezuzah psuchas, and you paskin stumas. We said that's not what Rav was talking about. Rav was just saying the other halach of Reb Shimon Elazar revach, but Rav Islam in Haga. But Rav holds we follow the minhag. Va'idna nug alma bestumas, and now we see that lamaisa we use stumas. The Amar Rav Kahana Amar Rav im Yavi Eliyahu v'yomer choyel tzilim b'menal. So the din is you have to do chalitza. The Torah says use a menal, but it's very controversial what exactly a menal is. A menal really at the time meant a shoe, something similar to a shoe. But the lashon, the actual word menal, over time, or a sandal, the word I think they use in the pasuk is a sandal, right? So the word sandal, like us, we have the word sandal not meaning a shoe. We have, to us, a sandal is something much more flimsy, but that's not what the original meaning was. So therefore, some people said. So Rav said, if Eliyahu will come and say, you use a minal, that and he'll say you must use a minal, which is a shoe, we would listen to him. But he says, ein cholzim besandal, if we say there's a takana, because that is taka what was supposed to be done. It was supposed to be done with a shoe. The lashon of sandal that it says in the pasuk really means a shoe. So he's paskening that you don't, even though people were noyig to do with a sandal, you could also you can do it with a shoe as well. But we say ein cholzam with sandal if he says you can't do it with a sandal because he says it's takana that people shouldn't come to do something that's even more flimsy that's not allowed. That we don't listen to him. Shekvar no go on besandal because people already do that. Since people use a sandal, so that's adequate. We don't listen. We follow the minhag. We wouldn't follow Eliyahu if he says that we should make a takana against it. So you see, we follow a minhag. Rav Yosef, there's a different version of this. Rav Yosef Kahana Marav im Yavel Yomer ein cholzim menal sheimin. If he would say you're not cholz with a menal, you listen to him. Ein cholzim besandal ein sheimin. But if he says you can't be cholz with a sandal, we don't listen. Shekfar no go on besandal. Since they are takanoig with a sandal, we can't contravene the minhag. Varmina and my benayu, what's the difference between them? In the meantime, Eliyahu hasn't come. So according to the second shot that we say, if you'd come in cholzin b'menal, so that means that right now the minhag is to use a menal. And according to the first shot that said, if you would say cholzin b'menal, the minhag is to use a menal right now, to use a shoe. So in any case, but the point is, we see from all this that he says we do follow a minhag. Elalav shma mina arevach shma mina. So elamai, it must be that since if he passed him like Reb Shimon Elazar, he couldn't have been talking about the din of psuchas because we know that the minhag is that there's stumas. So therefore, he would never pass in keneged the minhag, like we said from Eliyahu. So therefore, it must be taka. It's going on the revach. Okay, we'll stop over here. Shkoyach.
Thank you. Have a great day.
Belina, I know I could probably park already. I know, but.